Hi, my name is Chris Decker. Welcome to another episode of Mission Ready Podcast. As always, we're glad to have you. Today's episode features a leader with decades of experiences across military service, government, and the private sector, instability operations, and international development. We're joined by Howie Lind. So, Howie, thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
I'm very interested in your background, your history, even the book that you're writing today. So maybe you could talk about your college days and what got you to where you are today.
Great. Okay. Thanks for being here. This is a great opportunity. Yeah. So I grew up in McLean, Virginia. Went to Virginia Tech. One of my goals in high school growing up was to play baseball, college baseball, which I did at Virginia Tech. Great experience for a few years, NCAA playoff teams. And then when I realized, in college I wasn't going to be a professional player, I decided, okay, I better graduate and look for a career. And so I looked around, and the Navy was appealing to me. I had relatives. Father was in the Navy during World War II, and some other relatives were in. So I had kind of experience of the military, and I figured, okay, I'll give it a try. So I went to Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah.
And then figured, okay, I'd stay in for maybe first 2 or 3 or 4 years, and see how things go. Well, I get to my first ship in San Diego, and it was really challenging. As an ensign, on a ship, you can imagine, right? You know that it was really hard. So I figured, okay, I'll just do this, and then I'll get out and do something else. Well,
Which ship was it, by the way?
USS Stein, FF-1065, a frigate.
FF-10.
Yeah.
Okay.
We deployed twice to the Western Pacific, and after a couple of years, I kind of figured out, okay, I think I can do this, right? So I stuck around and went to the next ship in Charleston, South Carolina, USS Dewey, DDG-45, and that really was a great tour there. And then from there went to Monterey, a naval postgraduate school, which is a great experience too. And then third ship, I was in Newport, Rhode Island, on a frigate, FF-1096 Valdez, and then from there an Aegis cruiser in Norfolk, Virginia, USS Yorktown, CG-48.
Oh, you were in the Yorktown. Yeah,
actually, before that, I was in D.C. as a shore assignment for a couple of years, but then to Yorktown, and then to USS Karen. I was executive officer, DD-970, and then retired. Went to Commonwealth Surfland, retired. After
What was your major anyway at Virginia Tech?
Information systems. Well, actually, no, sorry. Statistics was my undergrad, and information systems.
Is that what your master's was at postgraduate school?
My master's at PG school was information systems, but undergrad was statistics at Virginia Tech.
And why were you guys in McLean? What did your dad do?
He actually was in the government early on, and then he transferred into the private sector. He was an electrical engineer, worked for one of the big, large companies. Now it was called United Technologies at the time. Now it's part of RTX now.
Back then, McLean was a pretty rural area, right?
Yeah, well, we're across from the CIA where I grew up, and a lot of people that worked there. My mom worked at the CIA when I was growing up, so we were close by.
So it wasn't as rural back then, even?
No, it wasn't that rural. It was pretty, not urban, but suburban. And close in. It's only a few miles from the George Washington Parkway, so it was easy to get in.
And Virginia Tech was like, you knew that's where you were going to go?
Well, actually, no, not really. I applied to schools all around Virginia, and wanted to play baseball. Talked to a lot of different coaches, and then when I got into Virginia Tech, I never even visited it. I called the coach on the phone. Coach, his name was Bob Humphreys, used to pitch for the Washington Senators way back when.
Yeah.
And he didn't know me, but I said, Coach, I'd like to try out for the team. He was all excited, said, okay, we got 3 walk-on spots, work out all summer, show up, tryouts the first day of school in the fall. I did, showed up, 100 kids just like me, played great, made the team. And it was really a great experience there for
walk-on's pretty hard to get on a team, right?
It is, yeah. There's only, because the rest of the team was scholarship.
What do you attribute that to at the time?
Just, I really had a desire to play in college, and just kind of knuckled down. And that's actually part of the book I'm writing, is the early part of that, kind of this challenge aspect of my life, which is, I've had other parts of my life with challenges, and really, buckled down and, persevered. So
did you always play outfielder when you were in high school?
No, I played everywhere, all over. Yeah, it's infield, pitcher, shortstop, third base in high school. But then in college, played in the outfield. Yeah.
Wow. Did you even think about professional at some point?
I did, yeah. But I realized, because I looked around, the talent. I mean, I was an okay player, but I was surrounded by really good players. A lot of them went on to the pros after
I suspect they did.
College. Yeah.
When I listened about you, the Navy career, you were on a lot of ships compared to most
Yeah, 5 ships.
Surface line guys.
Yeah.
There were probably double the number of ships that I hear other guys at 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's a nice, again, the challenge of being on ship is it was arduous duty. We deployed all over the world and did a lot of things. And I just kind of fell into it and enjoyed the.
How was it on the family? You were gone a lot, right?
It was tough. I had 4 little kids at the time. Of course, they're all grown now. But yeah, going away was tough to be gone, away from family.
They were always stationed in the United States?
Yes.
While you deployed?
Yeah, correct, yes.
What sort of operations were you involved in the 20 years?
Well, a lot, because in the Pacific originally, because this is, post-Vietnam, but the whole Cold War with the Soviets at the time, so kind of facing off with the Soviet Navy overseas and then Western Pacific. In the Mediterranean, we made several deployments there, just dealing with the southern NATO countries, throughout the North Atlantic with those countries up there too. So it's just a lot of bilateral, multilateral exercise. I was never in direct combat, but we were there at the first war, Gulf War, in the Eastern Mediterranean, with protecting the Kurds in the called Operation Provide Comfort. Yeah.
When you were in the Western Pacific, what sort of mission ready type things that you supported in a ship? How does that work?
Well, I was my jobs originally were gunnery officer and communications officer on my first ship, so a lot of comms work, but also in the gunnery world. But our main efforts we did in those tours, we were assigned to shadow the newest Soviet carrier, the Minsk. We've chased them all around the Western Pacific for several weeks, and then we had a bunch of spy people on board collecting intelligence from them. But then another key effort we did was we rescued a boat of Vietnamese refugees. This is it's in 1983. This is 7 to 8 years after the war. About 57 people on a small wooden boat, starving, out of water, out of food. But picked them up and took them, clothed them and bathed them and gave them new clothes and took them to Singapore, dropped them off there.
Singapore.
That's quite a humanitarian effort.
Yeah, our CFO in our company, he was one of those kids.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And he was deposited in the Philippines.
Wow.
And then he was there for a few years till he emigrated to the U.S.
Right. He
just went back to visit. But yeah, people don't remember a lot of those events back then.
Right.
Did they go on for a long period of time?
They did, yeah. There were several years of the refugees coming out of there.
And you guys had active, the U.S. Navy was active in trying to pick up those folks?
Yes, right. Yeah, we had interpreters on board. We chronicled everybody names and professions prior to 1975, prior to the fall of Vietnam. And
did you?
Post, they all became just street vendors and hardly any work available for them.
Oh, is that what was happening?
Yeah.
So what happened in the North Atlantic? Like what sort of operations are up there?
Well, we were actually, this is 1995. We were there for the 50th anniversary of VE, Victory in Europe Day, VE Day with the NATO ships. And at the time, we're friends with the Russians, so they were there too, right? So the Russian ship. And so we did a lot of exercises up there in the Baltic with them. Then the highlight of that tour, that deployment, was going to the port of Severomorsk, which is up near Murmansk. It's the Soviet head of the headquarters of the Soviet Northern Fleet. And Severomorsk made a port visit there.
Wow.
One of the not so good aspects of that is we hit bottom next to the pier, which Navy ships aren't supposed to do. The Russians drove us on. We had no harbor charts. They were relying on them to be the harbor pilots, and it was a great mishap. The tugs push you in? Well, we were just backing in. It's called a medmore, where you drop 2 anchors and you back into the pier. And we're right next to the pier with the whole entourage of admirals and ambassadors. It was a state visit. It was huge.
Wow.
And we back in, and I'm on the bridge with the captain, and we're backing in. And all of a sudden, right next to the pier, we just lurch over to the right. I mean, obviously, it was not good. And I yelled to the Russians, "We hit something. Don't know what it was." Well, it turns out it's this huge rock right next to the pier, and it's like terrible. Why would you put that?
They didn't know.
Well,
they didn't know this.
I don't know if they knew or not. Who knows if they knew? But it was so it was a twin propeller ship, so it totally destroyed one propeller.
Oh no!
The blades were torn out of one. There are 5 blades in a propeller. 2 of them were completely ripped out, so those inoperable. We were able to stay there for our port visit for 4 days. Everything planned went through, but for me as the executive officer navigator, it was a terrible experience to go through. but we were able to get out and get home at the.
They made repairs there?
Yeah, well, we couldn't make repairs, so we stopped in Portsmouth, England, and then transited across the Atlantic to Norfolk, and then major overhaul to replace the propeller there.
When there's a mishap like that, how did they handle it back then?
Well, it was, the Navy doesn't like when ships do that, right? So a big investigation. Well, we had an Navy admiral on board, myself, the captain. Of course, it was a big investigation. Hey, we said we were under the control of. It's always the captain's responsibility ultimately, but none of us were found at fault because of the way the Russians handled it. It was
that's very rare finding, right?
Yeah.
Because they always try to skewer the captain.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Wow, I can't. So it wasn't about you extending your port call, because you know how the Navy is.
Yeah, no, we stayed for the full 4 days of,
You guys will do anything to stay in port longer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The sailors really enjoyed it there with the Russians.
Oh, did they?
There was no nighttime. It was above the Arctic Circle, and so it was in May. So that whatever the solstice was, there was no nighttime. It was daylight 24 hours.
Wow.
So we told the crew be back by midnight. Cinderella Liberty. They didn't know what time it was because it's all night light. So it was kind of an interesting time there.
So when you think about what you did in school, high school, college, and then you go into the Navy, was there any critical pivotal points there that characterized where you are today and got you to where you are today?
I think it was really just going through these challenges. Like I said, initially with baseball, great challenge making the team, playing. In the Navy, every ship actually had its own challenges because as I go to each ship, I'm promoted to the next level up, Division Officer Department Head XO, and ships got more complicated and complex, and so each one had their own challenges to succeed, and which I did. As you know, in the Navy, it's you're always kind of on the edge of succeeding or getting fired.
Yes, very close, both of them.
Yeah. So being able to succeed throughout those was fine. The mishap in Russia, I'd been promoted to commander before then, but the Navy is okay. Well, maybe not go farther than that, which is fine with me. No regrets.
Yeah.
20-year career. I was happy
20.
and retired at 20 years. Yeah.
Wow. So then what happened after the Navy?
Well, yeah. So then I realized I wanted to get in the private sector. I'd been working in Norfolk at Comnav Surfland, the major staff headquarters there, and I'd been working with a lot of different companies, contractors, in the defense world, and had started a relationship with Booz Allen Hamilton down there in Norfolk. Oh. And so I went to work for them after the Navy, and that was good for 3 years. It was partly down there, then partly up in their headquarters in McLean near Tyson's Corner, Virginia. And then I had a chance, an opportunity to join the Bush administration in 2003. So 9/11 had happened, 2001. And
that's Bush 1 or Bush 2?
It was
Bush 2.
But George W. Bush, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Good.
And then 9/11 happens, and I'm thinking, oh God, I want to get back in the fight somehow. But okay, I'll go be a civilian at the Pentagon, and did that. Went in 2003. Of course, challenging
there too. What were your
too.
duties at the time in the Pentagon?
Yeah, I was the one of the special assistants working to help with the Iraqi, both Iraq and Afghanistan, with their provisional governments to try to help. So basically, I was kind of a head senior recruiter role. I wasn't a recruiter by trade, but I was interviewing a lot of senior people at the Pentagon and outside civilians to go to Iraq and Afghanistan to help with their governments. First, in Iraq, it was the Coalition Provisional Authority, the CPA.
Yeah.
Then it turned into the Iraq Reconstruction Management Office with the State Department. So I actually started out at the Pentagon, went to the State Department, came back to the Pentagon because the Army and the called ASALT, the acquisition lead for the Army, took over the reconstruction role of Iraq, and I became one of the deputies in the project and contracting office.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So is that the beginning of stability operations? I mean, you guys had a white piece of paper, right? You didn't have plans to do this?
It was really difficult. Yeah, we had a huge effort of a lot of different companies and within the Pentagon to develop this big plan of $21 billion to reconstruct Iraq with oil refineries, electricity, just schools, medical facilities.
Was that a civilian-run organization, or was there military associated with that?
It was both, because the civilians like myself, and also the military, a lot of Army Corps of Engineers folks were working in there too. And then, in fact, in the last year, I transferred over to the headquarters of the Army Corps of Engineers in Washington because they took over that role there too. So yeah, it was quite a challenge there.
What did you learn about that back then? What was
Well,
your thoughts?
that's really where I got into this whole world, which I just am now finishing up with ISOA with
Yeah.
the stability operations, because I had done prior to that Navy and then with Booz Allen. It was really just hardcore defense, ships, Navy type thing. This is entirely different, with the logistics and
Yeah.
support for overseas countries like this. So that's that. The learning for me was really about all this other world, and then that's how I eventually, actually, when I left the Pentagon, I went to work for Fluor Corporation, where I got into this with LogCap and major logistics contracting in there for 5 years, and then went into ISOA after that.
I mean, when you guys were standing up CPA, did they know that was going to be nation building and stability operations, or
Not really.
what were they thinking
I
was going
think
to
at the
happen?
time was really Deputy Secretary Rumsfeld, Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. The idea was get in, get it done, get out. Well, it turned into be not get out. Although DoD transferred the role of that over to State Department, but it just went on for a long time after that. So now, like today, Secretary Hegseth is saying we're not doing these long wars because it was just way too much money, and that just casualties and the servicemen, death toll was, couldn't replicate that again.
And you're definitely in support of that, right?
Yes.
It was just not the right way to go.
Correct. Yes.
But
right.
we did it in Iraq, but then kind of Afghanistan.
Same way. Yeah. Yeah. It was less. I mean, there was some combat in Afghanistan, combat operations, less so than Iraq, but still, it lingered on for a lot longer in Afghanistan. Yeah.
And so, were they trying not to do the same thing?
Yes.
From your perspective?
Right. I think they were just flat out saying, President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, we're not doing that again.
Yeah.
In Iran. I mean, topple the regime, new leaders there, and go forward. Not having hordes of Americans there, either in troops or civilians.
And do you think that'll be effective? I mean, what's your view on that?
I think so. I think they're doing it the right way. Taking out Iran has been. They keep saying it's lead state sponsor of terrorism, nuclear wannabe power. Can't have that. So I think killing the head of the snake is the right way to go.
What's the end state, though? Like, how do they define success in your view?
I think having some sort of a government that we can work with, the U.S. and the Western world can work with. However, whoever it is, if it's another mullah like the son of the one they're talking about, that's not going to work. But somebody that can work with the U.S. and the West, I think is the best way to go.
So you kind of live in Venezuela the way they did Venezuela.
Right. That's right.
But you think about the vice president in Venezuela, now she's taken over and seems to be acting responsibly.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
So maybe the mullah's son will do the same.
I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out. Yeah.
But what does that say about all nature of contracting? Like we used to do large logistics contracts, LogCap and AFCAP, and
right.
What do you think is going to happen going forward?
I think we still have to have that. I mean, as we're doing these major operations around the world, I think when Secretary Hegseth came in last year during his testimony, reading through a lot of his documentation, I had the feeling that he wasn't in favor of that. Okay, but I'm thinking there's a realization now. We got to have it. There has to be some sort of major logistics ability to carry out these missions around the world. So now, actually, just now, LogCap Day was held in Dallas, Texas this week. They're talking about a 20-year LogCap program.
Oh, they are.
I mean, originally it was 5, then 10, now maybe 20, which is, that's a lot.
What's the advantages of that, you think?
Just for stability over the long term, because there's so much give and take with companies, like yours. You've been involved in this for quite a bit. They come and go, and just the continuity, I think, of the program is the aspect of why
Will it still be geographically based, you think?
Yes. Yeah.
Multiple award
through the different combatant commands around the world. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you really think about all your life history, it really led to your final role as the ISOA chairman or president, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So when I came in 2016, Gerald Goss, then chairman, I had worked with him prior. I knew him from other work, but he said, "Hey, we're thinking of doing a leadership change." I was familiar with ISOA because when I was with Fluor, I was on the board of directors with ISOA, so I knew the organization. But then a few years had passed, and so he called me and said, "Hey, thinking of doing a leadership change here. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Well, maybe. I'm working somewhere else at the time." Anyway, he calls a couple weeks later, said, "Okay, we're having a board meeting today. If you say yes, you're in as president," right? So I said, "Okay." let me call my boss at the time, and all right, so I joined in August of 2016, and had no staff. I had an accountant.
Yes.
That was it. Pam was our accountant. But so we really couldn't do it. Couldn't send an email out. Right? So I brought in a couple of people, and I basically told the board at the time. I don't. That's before you were on the board.
Yes.
I think. I said I need your help to be able to execute the summit, and then whatever else we wanted, because they were the only thing they were doing at the time was just the annual summit, with a couple small meetings throughout the year. But so we did. The board stepped up. I had all hands on deck, as I would say from Navy time, and started building it. And so over the next few years after that, started bringing in some staff so we could do more events. And then we had an awards program the next spring, and then our first overseas conference was in 2018 in Dubai, and that was very successful. And that kind of spawned, we had an Africa Nairobi conference we'd had there, been there several years, back in the Middle East again, and in Europe. So this is all kind of leading up to the Ukraine war, the Russians invading Ukraine. We had a London conference in 2019. Now, of course, COVID comes around 2020. It was all virtual. 21, we're back in Dubai again. Early 22, we had a conference in Stuttgart, Germany, in April of 2022, so just right after the invasion. But it had been planned to be a EUCOM and AFRICOM focused conference. Well, it turned into solid EUCOM, Ukraine, and then we started having these Warsaw conferences every year, as well as a Germany conference. So we've had several of each. Germany in the spring, Warsaw in the fall. This last year we were in Bucharest, Romania in the fall, and then they're going back again in Wiesbaden in this coming April. So long and short of it, we've grew the staff from 0 or 1 to 10 to 10 people. It's very professional staff. Yeah. My successor there, Mike Howard, the CEO, he's
General Howard.
He'll do fine. We talk
so
frequently.
What year, Howie, was the year you were hired?
2016.
Okay, so you were there 10 years.
10 years, right?
And but was that the low point of ISOA, or was it near the low point? How many members did we have?
We had about 35 company members.
That was the low point then,
right?
Yeah, because I was there. Yeah. I was one of the members, and we were scratching our heads too in the company.
Yeah, they were thinking about just shutting the doors and just closing up. But
that's my memory.
But I think Gerald and the board said no, we're not the Titanic. We're not going down. We're going to stay. So I came on, and we got to the high point was over 200 companies a year or two ago, a little under 200 now with the drop off from this last year with all the efforts with Doge and everything. But
but also stability operations have changed, right? The way the administration's defining it.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
How do you foresee it going forward? I mean, in terms of the organization.
I think they'll be successful. They're adapting to the ways of the world now. This war in Ukraine has really changed the nature of warfare in so many ways. The drone warfare, the unmanned aerial systems, UAS, cyber, crypto. I mean, all these different areas, and ISOA is going to be is tapping into those. So the traditional logistics and services and medical and finance and those things, transportation, aviation, but these new areas is where I think ISOA will really capitalize on going forward.
It seems to me too that we're going from large industrial type firms to very smaller, nimble, agile technology firms, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we still need both. Still need the few big ones to kind of anchor the financial support for the association, but the middle and smaller, ISOA is mostly small businesses. But
that's true.
2/3 the companies are smalls. Yeah.
And do you see in the future? How do you think ISOA? Other than that, how will it change in terms of how it's going to interact with firms or the countries they're in?
I think it basically remain the same. The biggest change will be within the administration. Like this one, there was a lot of changes this last year, not just with Doge, but also with the contracting, more rules coming out of the Pentagon from Secretary Hegseth. Within the State Department, that's been fractured in the sense that we used to have really good relations with, the silos throughout state. Now, with the reorg and with a lot of still empty senior positions at state, it's been difficult to interact with the State Department from the ISOA standpoint. There's still some major big contracts out with state, but we hadn't been able to really tap into the leaders of those different groups. LawCap and DOD, the Department of War, is still in effect. But so to your question about change, whatever happens in the next administration,
Yeah.
or as this one goes forward, I think that's the biggest amount of change that'll happen.
I mean,
That's
it seems to me that's your big thing, right? I mean, every administration,
Right.
you're
Right.
trying to change to adapt to support the administration, no matter who it is.
That's right. That's right.
Have you
That's
seen a lot of changes in the 10 years in terms of how we should change as an organization?
Yes, I mean every new administration that comes in, there's different puts and takes, and it kind of ebbs and flows with our company memberships too. This last year was the largest drop of. I mean, we bring in a lot of companies, we lose companies every year. That's just kind of the nature
Yeah.
of it. But the net loss this past year was the largest because of the DOGE efforts. With USAID going
Yeah.
away, most of our companies were not directly involved in USAID, but some were, and they either just closed up or they pivoted to other areas. There's a few success stories of doing that. But I think going forward, it's going to be DoD, state, and others things. DHS, we do a lot of border work
Well,
here.
that's true, yeah.
Department of Commerce, still good work there too. The intel community. Can't talk about a lot of that stuff that they do, these companies, but there is a lot of work in the intel
Well, the whole
world too.
Western Hemisphere is a whole new,
Yeah.
real focus for us.
Exactly right. Yeah, Central South America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of changes in that regard.
Yeah.
I guess you just have to see how it'll go when the Congress changes here in the next year.
Right.
Do you think that'll have an impact on the administration, or do you think they'll still just execute as they plan?
I think they still will. I mean, whoever side of the aisle takes in the midterms, there'll still be work that has to be done for the U.S. overseas. The other area, of course, is the Indo-Pacific. We've had conferences there in Hawaii the last several years. I know your company's heavily involved there too. A lot of effort there. Within the Western Hemisphere, we had our two conferences in Miami the last year and the year before, and this year we're going to have it there too to talk about the border, the Western Hemisphere, not just South but also North Canada. Some untapped area is the Arctic. I mean, that's going to be
true.
A future.
I don't think I'll attend that
we're
conference.
at the North Pole, right? Right.
I sure don't like the cold anymore.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your background and then how the intersection of government, industry, and ISOA type stuff has worked. What are the lessons you've learned?
Yeah.
What's the career? Where do you think?
It's a great. I think back a lot. Of course, I'm writing this book about my life. I'll talk about that in a minute. But when I first got into leading ISOA, I realized, and I've told others about this, where my background of military, active military in the Navy, civilian government, the business world, and then politics. I actually ran for Congress years ago too. Those four areas, I think, mix in very well as far as leading this organization, having led ISOA, because every day, all four of those attributes are involved in something going on. Because we have a big presence active on the Hill. We still have a lobbying company that helps us lobby in Congress. So, as I look back and then forward, I think I still have some areas I can contribute. I'm doing some little consulting now and maybe on a few boards here and there. But I mentioned that my book, I started writing this last year thinking about my life, and it's not just a straight autobiography. It really is about, kind of a self-help, kind of an inspirational book to people who face challenges professionally, meaning that, either like a new young person starting their career or maybe a mid-career person trying to figure out what they want to do. It's a book about persistence, perseverance, the challenges that I had. It's kind of relating to, if you really want to do something, knuckle down and persevere and persist at it. And you might not succeed at everything. I didn't succeed at everything I did, but just say to yourself, I want to do this, and go for it. And
I mean, clearly, statistics, you didn't succeed. I don't hear anything about your major.
That's right. Right, yeah. So, that, of course, running for Congress wasn't successful, but that led to a lot of other things like ISOA and other areas of interest for me. But starting with baseball and then the Navy, and like I said, each of these ships that I was on had these particular challenges, and being able to knuckle down and say, I can do this, and getting it done is really.
What about? You talk about high pressure. Does that impact your ability to grow and all that?
Absolutely, yeah. It was, from the Navy. I mean, it was supreme high pressure, especially again coming out the first ship, and the never in direct combat, but also every day the threat or the concern about loss of life to machinery, huge amounts of responsibility at each level for people and the equipment to be able to operate correctly, do what you needed to do. I mean, the exercises that ships go on, these huge multi-ship pre-deployment or even on-deployment exercises, that's the closest to combat you'll get, and there's a lot of pressure there. I mean, people get fired during exercises because something didn't happen right. Okay, that's serious, and so the challenge at each level was always there for.
I'm sure you saw a lot of JOs just kind of melt.
Yeah, right, and then
a lot of challenges there. Right?
Yeah, and to say, I mean, I like back to my book again. I highlight a lot of this stuff, and not to say that I did great things. I mean, I didn't. I mean, really the book is about normal people. Most people don't do great things. They just try to live their lives and get along. But having a goal in their life or goals to knuckle down and get it done is really the key to that.
Yeah,
that book,
I guess people avoid that.
Right.
What you're describing, they avoid it.
Yeah, right.
But you're talking about how you grow by doing those things.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So I mean, you've seen a lot of guys transition from the military to the corporate world.
Right.
What's your observations of that, and how did you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I saw a lot of folks and still engage with a lot of those too. Some I saw didn't succeed very well because they still kind of had this military mindset, either whatever level of general, admiral, colonel, commander, captain. They just really wanted to stay in the kind of the military mold. I knew right away that's not the way to do it. To be able to succeed in the corporate world, you had to be more collegial, more forgiving, so to speak, or just be able to work with all levels of people, all genders, all everything, and not get hung up on military type, attributes. But for me, I felt comfortable doing that, going right into the corporate world and then going on back into the government and then back and forth with the job.
What do you think is less structure, or what are we describing? Like when someone goes from the military to the civilian world? Why? What tools or what could they do that makes it easier for them?
It's here's an analogy I used to say all the time. In the Navy, the Navy Supply Corps. Okay, we used to call them pork chops, kind of the nickname for them, right? Okay, they took care of all the food, supplies, logistics, and everything. Well, okay, when you retire and you go into a corporate job, all of a sudden you're the pork chop. You got to worry about logistics and finance and all that stuff that the Supply Corps always took care of. You had to worry about that in the your contract, the bids, the RFPs, the next work you're going to be doing. So it's all kind of a shift in focus from operations, hardcore, whatever you're doing in the Navy and military, to contractual obligations and challenges and opportunities. Yeah.
So you have to be more receptive to all that, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Or you're not going to be successful. But
right.
You talk about the transition from military to corporate, but you really took it to the next level in corporate where you're dealing with boards of directors, staff, as well as member companies.
Right.
How do you juggle all those and try to keep all these people happy?
Just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just my demeanor. I mean, I feel comfortable talking to a 4-star versus a brand new college student, and I just, I don't know, I just kind of fell into that. And still today, I'll think of, I like to mentor different young people and talk to them about what their career is. And then next step, I'll be meeting with 3 or 4-star admiral or general about what they're doing or how I can help them. But it's just I think a normal personal level that I try to reach with everybody.
But you think about it, Howie, you were 10 years on ISOA. I think that's the longest of any president, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And really, every quarter you have to get the board of directors support.
Right.
So a lot of your predecessors didn't last 10 years.
Right.
So what do you think that was?
Working with the board, as you know, former chairman yourself and being on the board many years, lots of egos, lots of challenges within each board member. Very, highly successful board members. Being able to work with all of them, that was a challenge too. The joke with my partner, I'd always come out of a board meeting, she'd ask me, "You still have a job?" I said, "Yeah, today I do." So that was kind of the running joke for a long time. But that's a great point, being able to appease the current board and go forward. Again, because they're all different. They come from their own companies, so they've got kind of a bias of that, but also being able to have their ISOA hat on to be able to look out for the whole organization.
One of the things I always saw with you is you never, your blood pressure never visibly raised.
Right.
You always, even if people were insinuating or making things very difficult for you, you still handled them all equally.
Well, yeah, thanks.
That's a big factor, I think, too.
Yeah, I think thanks for that. I probably would go home and scream and yell.
Oh, well, you kept your partner too.
That's right. Yeah, but within the meeting, I try to keep it calm and and professional. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that's an interesting time. When you think about the member companies, we've had a lot of member companies that weren't just from the U.S., right? They're from all over the world.
Right.
Did you find there was differences in how you handled them because of that?
Somewhat, but it's still the same. I mean, because they're business people, they understand the business world. But yeah, being able to kind of work, let's say walk the tightrope through the kind of the international aspect. Sometimes, not many, but once in a while there'd be some accusation of some wrongdoing or something for these companies, and we have to straighten them out. But that was really the exception. Most of them were very fine people, still fine people working on behalf of the U.S. and our allies. That's really what the mission of ISOA is, to support our governments and our allied governments, and be able to provide support from ISOA to help these companies succeed. So they all fell into the same category.
How did geopolitical events drive ISO's schedule? I mean, and how did member companies focus where the administration was going or where the world? How did you do that?
Yeah, that's a great one too, because we really did react to the world events, and we used the word nimble. We were be able to change on a dime quickly. For instance, when the Iraq War happened, Ukraine War. Again, we were in 2022 in Stuttgart, completely shifted to focus with Ukraine. So that was one aspect. The Middle East has always been conflict areas around there, so we are very well attuned to what's going on in the world. I'd always say that we're nonpartisan, but we pay attention to politics, right? Who's in the White House,
yes.
Congress, who's the lead. We follow the dictates of whoever's in power, so that we're not picking sides.
Very simple that way.
Yeah, not picking sides. So we'd say, okay, this is the direction of the administration here, Congress here, and we would react accordingly. And that's still the model now, even with my departure.
Well, what's the misconceptions, though, with stability operations or ISOA? Because I remember sometimes we'd have protesters at our events and all. What was your observation on all that?
I'd say we did, and just kind of minimally, we'd handle it professionally. But those people that they were kind of on the outs. I mean, they weren't part of the overall aspect of stability operations. But let me just talk for a second about the word stability operation. It's still kind of a misnomer. People don't understand it. When we'd have these conferences around the world, and people would come and they'd be at the conference saying, "Oh, wow, this is really cool." But then they tell me that they don't do stability operations. I said, "Well, what do you do?" Then they describe their company. Well, I said, "That's stability operations. It's logistics infrastructure, something involved in supporting our." So it's a wide spectrum of industries that make up stability operations.
And why is it not a favorable term now with the current administration?
I think again, PEC Secretary Hegseth, I'm just kind of reading between the lines, thinking that others at the Pentagon view stability as long-term war, Iraq, Afghanistan, like forever war, the phrase I like to use. That's not. But it's just been kind of branded that way. But as far as we're keeping the word stability. We're not going to change it. There has been talk over the years of changing the name, but it's a brand, ISOA. They're gonna keep that. So,
have you seen innovation, though, in the 10 years you've been? We stood up the Innovation Committee. What innovations do you see in stability operations over your time?
I think the whole digital. I mean, digital revolution's been going on for a long time, but everything's so electronic, and that's really of the past and going forward. But one of our we have 10 different committees in ISOA, one of which is a cyber technology and innovation, which now encompasses AI too. AI is such a huge area. So I think that's a big area going forward, but just innovating across the board. And your company too, you got to find new ways to be relevant to the government. So one of the aspects of our awards program every year is an innovation award, because we go out there, we canvass our companies. Okay, send in, if you want to receive an award in innovation, what'd you do in the last year or two? And there's some amazing things that companies like yours have done to innovate, to help our government and our foreign allied governments to do it better, more efficient, cost effective, supporting our government with in a safe and secure means.
I guess at the same time, procurement rules have changed too during the time.
Yeah.
What have you seen change over the years, you think?
Yeah, I think again, this last year, procurement really, like yours, others took big hits in areas of their key work efforts. I think procurement wise, one of the aspects of our conferences is the ability for speakers, keynotes, panels, and others from the government to come in and speak.
Yeah.
We've been very successful at that over the years.
Yeah.
This last year has been more difficult because the Pentagon Secretary Hegseth has come out and said, okay, we're really restricting the people who can come out and speak at conferences, at keynotes and panelists. And we still had a few. The biggest challenge was actually just in February, last month in Jordan. We had a conference there. Of course, that's before the Iran war started, but having the military and State Department officials speaking there was we had some, but not as many as we have had in the past. So that was kind
Is that a money-saving thing, or what do you think's happening?
I think it's maybe money-saving. I think more just like, okay, let's close down a little bit on the amount of free information back and forth from the government, which I don't agree with. I think you need to be more open as best you can.
Yeah, definitely. When you go to the trade associations, there's not much government participation.
Right.
And obviously we all work for the government, so it's getting to be difficult to understand what's going on. You think that'll change, or do you think that's going to be the way it's going to be?
I think it'll ebb and flow. I think, again, if whoever the next administration is, or if this one, they might ease it as they realize that, hey, there's got to be better communication back and forth. Let me just talk for a minute about the Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR.
Yeah.
There's a huge effort right now to reduce the FAR from huge to very small, which is good, make it more simpler. But at the same time, the whole mentality of the FAR has been don't talk to private industry, and so these companies or the government still now, even with all the talk about more interchange, the government is still restrictive in ability to talk with contractors. Even if it's about not even something that's out there yet. Pre-solicitation.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it, so it's still a challenge.
Yeah, and it makes it hard to understand the requirement, right? If they don't have industry's input.
Mm-hmm.
So especially complex operations.
Right.
Yeah, I see that too. So when you think about ISOA, the 10 years, what things were the high points? What were the things that we made a difference?
I think the ability to go overseas, and it was really, it took a lot of doing, because we like I said, we first came in, the summit was the only thing we were doing. We next had an awards program, then our first conference in Dubai. That really opened up I always say that our first name is international, right, for ISOA, so let's be international. And so that spawned these other conferences, and it really brought in, that's what drew in the membership from going from 35 to 200. We'd have these, because even with a U.S.-based company like yours or others based here, they're conducting operations around the world, and so they would have their units, their offices in these areas participate in that conference. And then that would bring in other companies who hadn't heard of us. And I always said, when we first, all the Dubai conferences we've had, I said, man, there's 1,000 companies here in Dubai that never heard of us. We never heard of them. Let's try to bring some of them in.
Yeah.
And it did. So the programmatics of the association, meaning the conferences, and also not just that, but the webinar, virtually, with COVID in 2020, we went total virtual.
Yeah.
But we kept a lot of that still now, with every couple of weeks a virtual, like a working group for Ukraine, Middle East, Indo-Pacific, as well as committees and other meetings, and also local chapters. Like in Africa with your company. Thank you for supporting that there in Nairobi, but also in the Middle East, Germany, Indo-Pacific. So it's all those really combined, I think, over the years to be the high points.
Do you think that's the trend too? Continue engagement like that?
Yes, I do.
So really, it's a management thing, right? Because you can't. Who controls all these meetings, and how do we do it?
Right. It's
Any
really
thoughts on that?
Well, I know my predecessor or my successor, Mike Howard. He's thinking of bringing on more staff to handle this, because that really is a key. we got a great staff. Roxanne Kaufman, now the president of the association, and him as the CEO. They're figuring out ways to manage it because of the growth. You know, the aspect of how many staff are needed for the size of the association. They're down a few, so they need for more people to be able to handle all this
through more engagements, more events.
Correct. Yes, and membership with, recruiting as well as retaining members. To bring in Hector Velez as our director of membership. He's doing a great job there, and so it's all.
Yeah,
I
think
combined.
it's going good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about global trends, leadership, and your view of things. Where do you think, in terms of stability operations, we talked about up to now, where do you see it in 5 years or 10 years?
I think it will continue pretty much along the same way. It depends on geopolitical events. What happens, of course, with Iran. On the positive side, if Iran happens, normally like we hope it'll be, then there can be a huge amount of economic activity more in the Middle East because of the threat of violence going away. So that I think that could be a key area there. Europe, our president has been criticized for chastising them about the lack of, or the small amount of defense spending. That's increasing. So they've committed the European countries, NATO, EU, to upping their GDP of spending on military defense to 5%, which is unprecedented. And that's over the next 10 years. So from 2025 last year to 2035, they've committed to increase up to 5% GDP. So that's amongst itself, separately, Europe, that's a great opportunity for our companies and others there too. Germany being the largest economy in Europe, as well as all the countries that have been helping out with Ukraine, that's a big area. Indo-Pacific, China still remains a threat, as you know. You're very active over there. I think that'll continue to grow. Who knows how the Chinese will respond with Taiwan, but those are still a big area. The Western Hemisphere, same thing with the border and everything going on in the south of the U.S.
But, when I listen to you, so you're saying, okay, it's about the same. It's just more expanded things, a lot more places, but also more multinationals, more government agencies, even outside the U.S.
Right.
So ISOA is going to have to, the members are going to have to figure out how to do business in Europe.
Right.
Big changes like.
It's right. It's exactly right. Yeah, I think outside of the U.S. government, all the agencies and the government agencies in Germany, the U.K., and others, they'll have to figure out how to work better with them. Yeah. That's true.
And I just look at patterns like you go back to World War II where the U.S. did everything, all the logistics, all in the government. And then over time, they went to private industry. Do you think there'll be increasingly less government role in stability and it'll be more financed and private? Or how do you see it?
That could be. I mean, the whole private equity aspect, of companies that are looking at buying up, smaller companies to handle this. I think that's certainly a great possibility. You mentioned this used to be with the military handling all the logistics. Well, that really stopped in the early 90s with the whole peace dividend. Remember that? And so we're not going to go back to the military handling.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's going to be still the private sector, your companies and others doing all this work infrastructure-wise and logistics that's going to continue forward.
But I think a lot of the companies now are government focused. Their procurement processes, the compliance, the FAR, much different than a private equity.
Oh yeah.
And how are the current companies in ISOA going to evolve to the next level? And will it go to the next administration that changes?
Yeah, I think it will. I think
you do. You think that'll stick?
I think it'll stay on. Yeah.
Because you remember the old days it was OPIC.
Yeah.
And then even before that was something else, and then you have now DFC,
the Development Finance Corporation. Yeah.
Any thoughts on how that's evolved over time?
I think it's going well. But I just saw them this week again, and they've spoken at our conferences this past fall. They're still trying to figure out their way, meaning like with its administration, they're not the replacement for USAID, but they do similar type work of huge financing in particular areas. Kind of the question mark, which I hear, is who's doing the choosing of which companies or which areas get picked by DFC or by our government. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a small group of people at the White House or the National Security Council figuring, okay, go here, go there. But it's still, I think the DFC is what this administration is relying on for development financing. So there's a huge pot of money allocated. I think they're still kind of slow getting rolling as to farming out the funding for it. But I think that's the
But
way to go
you think
forward.
about how those decisions are made. The firms are taking on such risk. There's probably so few
Yeah.
private equities that are going after the opportunities, right? So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not like it's a competition in the federal government
Right.
where risk is low.
Mm-hmm.
They're bearing the risk. So
Yeah.
how are those decisions going to be made?
I don't know.
There might only be one firm that has any interest in doing something like that.
Right. That's right. Maybe yours.
Yeah, well, maybe, but
Yeah,
the financing aspect is,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
No,
the
that's
side
right.
of
Yeah.
it.
No, risk management is really that's a key thing, and that gets back to this war with Iran too, with companies going there, the whole Gulf, oil flow. It's this risk management of whether a company is going to support their tanker going through the Gulf or not because of this high threat from Iran. So, yeah, it's a tough world out
I mean,
there
the
right
one
now.
thing that I see, say, in Asia is you have the Chinese enterprises that are funded by the Chinese government. They're quasi-government
Right.
agencies.
Right.
They're basically taking no risk because they have the backing of China.
Right.
And they're competing head-on-head with
Right.
Fluor and large companies on
Right, and they
tenders.
and they can undercut them. It could
Yes.
so that I'm sure it's a
Yeah.
tough environment to do
So
that. Right.
unless we figure a way to move to more of a private equity where equal risk is bared,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to continue to see trouble on that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it is tough for these companies, yours and big ones, getting undercut by the Chinese, who can, come in for way under the bid price.
Yeah.
And it's
You
tough.
look at the case studies. They're ports, airfields,
Right.
Panama Canal.
Right.
These are areas that they can generate revenue.
Right.
So they come in and take custody of these.
Right.
And
Right.
how will America compete with that in the future?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad to see the Panamanians kicked out the Chinese of the Panama Canal. Whether that's all 100% or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard about that, but
And specifically, we're hearing in that case that they bribed and undercut everybody to get those
right,
contracts. So
right, that's right.
So if you were competing with them, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. One aspect of this whole China, situation is with our President Trump. He's been fixated on China since 10 years ago when he first came in.
Yeah.
So I think he's on this issue, whether it can be, worked out and figured out where we can have better competition for our companies to participate. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm optimistic with the president meeting President Xi here soon.
Oh yeah.
Perhaps some good things will come out of that finally.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We can settle things out. But
Yeah.
So your point is the private sector, lots of changes. It seems like
Correct.
as you look forward.
Lots of changes, but also I'm very optimistic though about the private sector because.
Yeah.
Again, we're the engine of making stuff happen, right? I mean, the government just says, "Okay, go in this direction. Here's money to do it." We do it. You do it. That'll be the continuing nature. It's just a matter of the rules and the regulations, how it's going to be all.
Well, it's
figured
even
out.
sounded like the government saying, "This is what we want to do. We're not going to give you any money, but we're going to take some risk off the table so you can do it."
Right.
So that seems even more big changes.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So, so let's talk about Iran and the escalation out there. What do you think generally is happening in the CENTCOM area? You have any sense of that?
Just from TV, but again, we had our conference in Jordan earlier in February. Prior to that, we did have a couple folks, two colonels from CENTCOM on some panels there who were great speakers, and they couldn't talk classified, but they kind of laid out what the whole planning was looking like. But I think CENTCOM has done an amazing job at this whole operation, Epic Fury, into Iran. Again, hopefully it'll pan out properly. I mean, the initial effect with the oil restricting it from Russia and China is huge. I think that's a world-changing balance of power. Meaning it's and I've always said this for Ukraine, cutting off the supply of oil to Russia, giving the weapons to Ukraine that they need, the war would be over. I mean, because Russia can't continue on without this, funding their war machine through oil. And then with China, they don't make any at all. So if this is restricted to them too, I'm sure that's what President Trump's going to be talking to President Xi Jinping about soon. with this restriction of oil to China. But so I think the whole world balance is in play here. But back to Iran, hopefully as soon as this can be finished, then we can get into a normal state of affairs throughout the Middle East without the threat of terrorism with attacks and just economic prosperity really blossoming throughout the Middle East.
I'd like to be
more
optimistic about this too.
Yeah.
But also, you look at how Epic Fury's been executed through the COCOM. Very well done, right?
Oh, I think it's just amazing. I mean, the way they've pinpointed all these targets and working with Israelis, of course, they've got, they're right there. But yeah, I'd say it's going extremely well.
Yeah, and this idea that America is somehow lazy or getting old, or it doesn't seem to be true.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think, as you pay attention to all this, what does it reveal in terms of regional escalation, role of government, private sector, and maintaining stability? Where do you think it's?
I think we'll just have to be positioned to respond as the companies always do. Meaning, if it's in the Western Hemisphere, there's more to do with Venezuela or other countries that yet to be determined within the Mexico could be a problem. Of course, this whole Greenland issue too. But I think the industries, our companies, ISOA companies, will just have to be responsive, which they are, be able to respond quickly to the world-changing events. If China decides, okay, we're going to take on Taiwan, all right, what's that mean for everybody? The other aspects around Europe. The current situation in Europe it's not entirely friendly right now to us, meaning the U.S. I mean, there's no threat of war, but just this not agreeing with some of the things that our country is doing. So it's going to be, I think, an ongoing challenge within Europe for our companies to be able to work there. But still, each of it was interesting. Every Germany conference we've had, this will be the fourth or fifth one coming up in April this year. The Germans are very interested in the way that the U.S. government does our procurement and our defense spending. And all that. They don't have a Pentagon. They don't have a bureaucracy like that. So they always ask us, can we help them, train them, educate them? And I always say, yes, sure, yes, we can. But they're still reluctant to be able to kind of dive into that. I think it's from the post-World War II mentality of, small military, don't want to have a big war machine like they had before with Hitler and such. So that's still a challenge of how Europe and Germany particularly responds to this growing need for a bigger defense, even though they said, okay, we'll increase to 5% GDP.
Yeah, but what I see is funding in the U.S. is decreasing for traditional logistics operations.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But we're hoping our partners are going to increase. Right. But they seem to be limiting U.S. ability to participate in those.
Right. That's right.
So
yeah. I mean, I know. Ukraine's a great example where your company, others have been over there for many years. You want to participate with contractual vehicles, and they say, well, we want to keep it to Ukrainian or Eastern European companies. All right, well, ours, yours, others have the expertise, the knowledge to be able to do it properly. You should be getting the contracts, some of them, where you can. So that's a problem.
Yeah, I suspect that'll be something the administration will eventually have to talk, because you want to have all different nations involved.
Right, that's right.
But maybe that does mean that local participation is more important. I don't know. But the whole idea of NATO, the idea of NATO going away and all, you don't see that, right?
No, they'll stay. I mean, the whole aspect of NATO, the EU, it's despite some naysayers about it now, they'll stay for the long term.
Yeah, that's what I see too. So let's talk about your time at ISOA, just a specific leadership thing that you had to deal with and something that got your attention back then, and then you turned, and we actually made some big improvements, not just staffing an organization.
Let me think back now. Because every year, like you were a chairman, I had a new boss every year. As chairman,
that's true.
Right? So every year I'd have to kind of figure out, okay, what's this new person like? And most of them were fine. A couple of them not too fine. But I think that challenge for me, staffing, but also being able to handle these overseas conferences, being able to manage all these companies joining. I mean, it was a good problem to have, but we really got kind of inundated quickly over the few years after starting these conferences. So being able to be able to deal with that, I think was challenging. We had not many, a couple instances where companies misbehaved. Okay, so we said, okay, either step aside as a member, or maybe they weren't a member yet. We said no thanks, that's okay. But it was, I wouldn't say it was totally smooth, but it was a good flow over those years.
Yeah, it was pretty smooth.
Again, some of the board members a little difficult to deal with sometimes, but overall it was a great experience, and glad to have done it. And as I say, that was the most professional, rewarding experience of my career.
Was it?
The 10 years with ISOA? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just being able to start it at that low point, bring it up, and being able to succeed and help with these companies. I'd always say at the beginning of every conference, intro short speech, I'd say, we're here to help you succeed, your company succeed, and to the government to help you interact with the private sector. And I use the kind of the metaphor of we stand at the intersection between government and industry to help both sides work together properly. Yeah.
Well, as you're writing your book now, is there anything about next generation leaders, any messages you want to give us that would help?
I mean,
kids today.
Yeah, I think the actual theme of the book is really, most people don't do great things, but you can do normally things if you really want to buckle down and get it done. Just believe in yourself, persistence, persevere, and go for it. It's again, it could be for anybody, young person, mid-career, or even late career. Somebody just kind of needs to get a little motivation, buckle down and do it. They always people talk about mentors. Everybody has a mentor. Well, no, most people don't have a mentor.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just got to look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get it done, or I'm going to try my best. And if you don't make it, all right, but you did it. You tried for it. So I'd say for future leaders, I'd say just kind of project that kind of the mentality into your people, peers, subordinates, seniors. Also, you can work up your chain of command too to help with people that really need a kick in the pants to get going.
Well, when I think about what you're saying, it's really counter to what kids see in say social media. You see instant gratification, people getting rich and millionaires overnight and all this.
Right.
That is not the message you're saying.
Absolutely not. It's really believing in yourself and not succumbing to that, because that really is kind of the anti-message about yourself, your goals, your mission. Like what do you want to do, and don't listen to the naysayers. Oh, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or that's no good. Go this way, because that's kind of my aspect too. Running for Congress, like, what? Are you crazy? What are you doing that for? Why are you running for Congress?
Did you get a lot of that at the time?
Yeah. People, some inside my family, outside, friends saying, "What the, that's crazy." I said, "I know, but I feel the calling to do it." Because I'd been involved in Virginia politics for many years before that, so I had a feel for how it was going to work. But still, it's a huge investment in time and effort and money. But again, not successful. The way I look back on it, though, is if you're creating a small business, you put a lot of time, effort, and money into it, and they're all not successful.
Correct.
This is the same way. In running for office, you start as a small business. You want to become a big business by winning, but if you don't, okay, then go off and do something else.
Was there any other things you learned when you were campaigning, and
Just, actually, maybe getting back to your first question about being able to interact with different people. When you're campaigning, you interact with a lot of different people, right? All ages and backgrounds and feeling political beliefs all across the spectrum. So you really have to be open to hearing and listening to people, and empathizing with them about their station in life, about what their problems were. So I think that was the biggest
So you think
thing.
that contributed to your presidency in ISOA? Because honestly, you handled everybody. You didn't have much conflict with anybody.
No, I'd say that's a good aspect. Yeah.
And you think most congressmen have those types of qualities?
Yeah, I think. Well, they should. I'm not sure if they all do, but yeah.
Well, that's a good point, Howie.
Yeah.
Well, so the book, when do you think you'll have it done?
I think this year. So I've done the first chapter, and then so it's kind of a different model where I'm not sitting down. Let me just tell you real quick how this all started. It started actually a couple of years ago. we have a huge presence on LinkedIn, with ISOA and me personally. And so I'd be getting these ads from all sorts of ads all the time about this, that, and the other. But this one company, this publishing company, online company, started sending me repeated emails about, you should write a book, write a book. And I don't have time to write a book. What are you talking about? So finally I had a call with them, a video call, and they described the whole process where I wouldn't write. I'd have ghost writers doing it, not AI, but real people. But I'd do a series of video interviews. So like a 1 hour long, or 13, one for each chapter, 13 chapters, 13 1 hour long videos talking about whatever parts of my life, whatever aspects I want to do. And then they're creating that into the chapters. So the first chapter's done, the rest are being written now, and I've done the book cover. Let me just tell you the title of the book. It's called Not Qualified, But Coming Anyway. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but it's actually from a real story of the Navy where I wanted to go to Naval Postgraduate School, but no, you couldn't get it. You don't have the right academics. You got to do this, that, and the other. I can't do that. Anyway, I persevere, got in, showed up out there, and then when I get to the commander's office where I was going to be in his curriculum, I saw a yellow sticky on his folder said, "Lind, not qualified, but coming anyway." So it's like, okay, that's kind of my life, right? Where I take on these challenges. And one other aspect of this is, as I've been talking to people about this book, someone introduced this idea to me. It's called the imposter syndrome, where you get promoted or you find yourself in a situation in work or somewhere in life where you look around and say, God, I don't know what I'm doing here. These people are all smarter than me. I can't succeed at this. But then you buckle down, and after a year or two, you feel, I can do it. Then you end up being very successful at it. So it's kind of like that whole mentality of the book. So anyway, it'll be out later this year, probably, I don't know, August, September, in the fall sometime. But
Christmas stocking stuffer there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Is it going to be a bestseller, you think? Or?
I don't know. We'll see. I maybe do some public speaking about it and see.
Good.
Yeah.
Will it be on Amazon? Is that?
I think they will be. Yeah. It's. I'll make sure.
It's your first book.
Yeah, first one. Yeah, first.
That's
I'll make sure you know about it. When it comes
very
out.
very interesting. Well.
Yeah.
What other things, Howie, would you like to talk about today?
I tell you, one thing is interesting to me. This whole Ukraine war, to me, has been a passion because I realize, as you and others, Russia attacking basically a first world country, next door neighbor, who has part of their heritage. To me, it's like us attacking one of our states, Texas, California. I mean, come on, what are you doing? And so getting to know the people of Ukraine over this last 4 years too, I'm realizing the U.S. should be doing everything we can to get Russia out of there.
Yes. So,
and that was, I portrayed that with ISOA leadership. But since then, I've joined the U.S. Ukraine Business Council, USUBC, led by Irina Pashvili. And so I've been attending a lot of their events. And so my idea is to help them wherever they need help in, like in Congress, on the Hill, in D.C. here with the messaging. I even with the Iran war happening, there's still a lot of support on the Hill for Ukraine, both sides of the aisle. Okay, so I think that needs to be galvanized to be able to tell the administration, hey, let's get this done, because the president and the administration have been it's kind of all over the place as far as trying to end the war, even though President Trump says, it's 25,000 people dying every month, which is terrible. Okay, stop the war, figuring out what the peace is. So I want to really help with that.
That's good. What else are you going to focus your time on, you think?
I think I'll do some little consulting with some of the different companies, but really just kind of taking a step back, and just easing back, into this, I call it semi-retired life. But, with the book and with other consulting, maybe on a few boards.
Are you still helping ISOA in any way?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, so I talk with Mike Howard every week. We have a call.
Oh, that's great.
He kind of bounces things off me, and I kind of give the historical aspect.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so it's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Howie, congratulations.
Yeah,
you made it. You survived. And
thanks.
Thanks for being here for Mission Readiness today.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for your leadership, too, with ISOA and for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's very important, I think, to document these things.
Right. Yeah.
And so we're always looking for thought leaders like yourself
to
teach the people. And you never know what's going to happen in the future.
Right. Okay.
So having you here documented today is great.
Great. Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Howie. Appreciate it.
Okay. All righty.
With our audience, I'd like to say, everyone listening and watching out there, don't forget to like us, comment, share, and subscribe. and stay tuned for more conversations. We'll see you on the next episode.